Hi there, my dear friends, and welcome back to another episode of Whispering Wikipedia. Today we are whispering about the history of the internet. Sorry if I keep looking this way, I was doing that last chapter too. There is a spider hanging on a web really close to my face, just outside of your view. This is Australia. It's kind of what it's like. It's just in the middle of my house, floating in the middle of my room. Maybe I'll get it out of the way. You just go and hang out over there. That's how us Australians do it. Okay. I'm covered in spiderweb, but let's read. Now, last time we closed by looking at networks that led to the internet, starting with the NPL network. Now we're moving on to the ARPA network, and this seems to be the one that's mentioned the most. Anyway, Robert Taylor was promoted to the head of the Information Processing Techniques Office, IPTO. Congratulations. At Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA. In 1966, he intended to realize Licklider's ideas of an interconnected networking system. As part of the IPTO's role, 3 network terminals had been installed, one for System Development Corporation in Santa Monica, one for Project Genie at the University of California, Berkeley, and one for the Compatible Time-Sharing System project at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Taylor's identified need for networking became obvious from the waste of resources apparent to him. For each of these 3 terminals, I had 3 different sets of user commands. So if I was talking online with someone at SDC and I wanted to talk to someone I knew at Berkeley or MIT about this, I had to get up from the SDC terminal, go over and log into the other terminal and get in touch with them. I said, oh man, it's obvious what to do. If you have these 3 terminals, there ought to be one terminal that goes anywhere you want to go, where you have interactive computing. That idea is the ARPANET. Bringing in Larry Roberts from MIT, he initiated a project to build such a network. Roberts and Thomas Merrill had been researching computer time sharing over wide area networks. At first, ACM Symposium on Operating System Principles in October in 1967, Roberts presented a proposal for the ARPANET, based on Wesley Clark's proposal for using interface message processors to create a message switching network. At the conference, Robert Scantlebury presented Donald Davies' work on packet switching for data communications, and he mentioned the work of Paul Barron at RAND. Roberts incorporated the packet switching concepts into the ARPANET design and upgraded the proposed communication speed from 22 kbps to 50 kilobytes per second. ARPA awarded the contract to build the network to Bolt, Bergner and Newman, and the first ARPANET link was established between the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, and the Stanford Research Institute at 20 to 30 hours on October 29, 1969. And here is a excerpt from an interview. We set up a telephone connection between us and the guys at SRI. Clean Rock said in an interview, we typed the L and we asked on the phone, do you see the L? Yes, we see the L, came a response. We typed O and we asked, do you see the O? Yes, we see the O, and then we type G, and the system crashed. Yet a revolution had begun. Interesting story. Classic that it crashed straight away. By December of 1969, a 4-node network was connected by adding the University of Utah and the University of California, Santa Barbara. In the same year, Taylor helped fund AlohaNet, a system designed by Professor Norman Abramson and others at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, that transmitted data by radio between 7 computers on 4 islands at Hawaii. By 1981, the number of hosts had grown to 213. ARPANET development was centered around the request for comments RFC process, still used today for proposing and distributing internet protocols and systems. RFC1, entitled Host Software, was written by Steve Crocker from the University of California, Los Angeles, and published on April 7th, 1969. These early years were documented in the 1972 film Computer Networks, The Heralds of Resource Sharing. ARPANET became the technical core of what would become the Internet, and a primary tool in developing the technologies used. The early ARPANET used the Network Control Program, NCP, sometimes Network Control Protocol, rather than TCP/IP. On the January the 1st of 1983, known as Flag Day, NCP on the ARPANET was replaced by the more flexible and powerful family of TCP/IP protocols, marking the state of the modern Internet. Early international collaborations on ARPANET were sparse. Connections were made in 1973 to the Norwegian seismic array, NORSAR, via a satellite link at the Denham Earth Station in Sweden, and to Peter Kirsten's research group at the University College London, which provided a gateway to British academic networks. Now we move to the Merit Network. The Merit Network was formed in 1966 and as a Michigan educational research information triad to explore computer networking between 3 of Michigan's public universities as a means to help the state's educational and economic development. With initial support from the state of Michigan and the National Science Foundation, NSF, the packet switched network was first demonstrated in December of 1971, when an interactive host-to-host connection was made between the IBM mainframe computer systems at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor and Wayne State University in Detroit. In October 1972, connections to the CDC mainframe at Michigan State University in East Lansing completed the triad. Over the next several years, in addition to host-to-host interactive connections, the network was enhanced to support terminal-to-host connections, host-to-host batch connections, remote job submission, remote printing, batch file transfer, interactive file transfer, gateways to the TimeNet and Telenet public data networks, X.25 host attachments, gateways to X.25 data networks, Ethernet attached hosts, and eventually TCP/IP, and additional public universities in Michigan join the network. So basically what I get from that is a bunch of places and a bunch of technologies join the network. All of this set the stage for Merit's role in the NSFNet project starting in the mid-1980s. Now to the next network, Cyclades. The Cyclades packet switching network was a French research network designed and directed by Louis Poussin. Building on the ideas of Donald Davies, Poussin developed the network to explore alternative to the early ARPANET design and to research. First demonstrated in 1973, it was the first network to make the host responsible for early delivery of data, rather than the network itself. Using unreliable datagrams and associated end-to-end protocol mechanisms, concepts of this network influenced later ARPANET architecture. It sounds a little bit like Thomas Edison or the company Apple, in the way that it assimilates and takes technologies that people have made and improves them and uses them for itself. ARPANET. Interesting. Now, X25 and the public data networks. Based on international research initiatives, partially the contributions of Remy Debray, packet switching network standards were developed by the International Telegraph and Telephone Consultative Committee, the ITU-T, in the form of X25 and related standards. X25 is built on the concept of virtual circuits emulating traditional telephone connections. In 1974, X25 formed the basis of the CNET network between the British academic and research sites, which later became JANET. The initial ITU standard on X25 was approved in March 1976. The British Post Office, Western Union International and TimeNet collaborated to create the first international packet switch network, referred to as the International Packet Switch Service, the IPSS, in 1978. This network grew from Europe and to the US to cover Canada, Hong Kong and Australia by 1981. By the 1990s, it provided a worldwide networking infrastructure. Unlike ARPANET, X25 was commonly available for business use. Telenet offered its telemail electronic mail service, which was also targeted to enterprise use, rather than the general email system of ARPANET. The first public dial-in networks used asynchronous TTY terminal protocols to reach a concentrator operated in the public network. Some networks, such as Telenet and CompuServe, use the X25 to multiplex the terminal sessions into their packet-switched backbones, while others, such as TimeNet, used proprietary protocols. In 1979, CompuServe became the first service to offer electronic mail capabilities and technical support to personal computer use. That would give them a massive advantage, giving people email. The first company broke new ground again in 1980 as the first to offer real-time chat in its CB simulator. And other major dial-in networks were America Online, AOL, and Prodigy, that also provided communications, content and entertainment features. I'm pretty sure AOL technology in some places is still used, though of course it's not as good as modern things. Many bulletin board systems, BBS, networks also provided online access, such as FidoNet, which was popular amongst hobbyist computer users, many of them hackers and amateur radio operators. In USSR, first computer networks appeared in the 1950s in missile defense systems at Saryshaygan. In the 1960s, the massive computer network project called OGAS was proposed, but failed to be implemented. Since the late 1970s, X.25 Soviet networks began to appear, and Akademset emerged in Leningrad in 1978. By 1982, Vienna Pass Institute was created in Moscow to serve as an Akademset central node, which established X25 regular connection to ISA in Austria. In 1983, Soros created Soviet X25 service provider called SFMT. Interesting. In 1983, San Francisco, Moscow teleport that later became SOVAM teleport, Soviet American teleport. VNII PATS also provided X-25 services, including over satellite to Eastern Bloc countries together with Mongolia, Cuba and Vietnam. USSR nominally joined private FidoNet network in October of 1990, when first node of Region 50 appeared in Novosibirsk. SOVAM teleport in early 1990s became a first SWIFT network provider for emerging Russian banks over X-25. Some of the early Soviet Russian networks were also initiated as part of the BitNet. Interesting. Now moving to the UUCP and the Usenet. In 1979, two students at Duke University, Tom Truscott and Jim Ellis, originated the idea of using Bourne shell scripts to transfer news and messages on a serial line UUCP connection with nearby University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Following public release of the software in 1980, the mesh of UUCP hosts forwarding on the Usenet news rapidly expanded. UUCP-net, as it would later be named, also created gateways and links between FidoNet and dial-up BBS hosts. UUCP networks spread quickly due to the lower costs involved, ability to use existing leased lines, X-25 links or even ARPANET connections, and the lack of strict use policies compared to later networks like ZSNet and BitNet. All connections were local. By 1981, the number of UUCP hosts had grown to 550, nearly doubling to 940 in 1984. Sublink Network, operating since 1987 and officially founded in Italy in 1989, based its interconnectivity upon UUCP to redistribute mail and news groups' messages throughout its Italian nodes, about 100 at a time, owned both by private individuals and small companies. Sublink Network represents possibly one of the first examples of the internet technology becoming progress through popular diffusion. Now we move to merging the networks and creating the internet, which happened in 1973 to 1995. Starting with TCP/IP. With so many different network methods, something was needed to unify them. Bob Kahn of DARPA recruited Vinton Cerf, a name we've seen before, of Stanford University to work with him on the problem. Steve Crockett formed an ARPA networking group with Vint Cerf. Concurrently, an international networking working group formed in 1972. Active members included Vint Cerf, Alex Mackenzie, Donald Davies, Roger Scantlebury, Louis Bouzon, and Hubert Zimmermann. By 1973, these groups had worked out a fundamental reformulation where the difference between network protocols were hidden by using a common internet protocol, and instead of the network being responsible for reliability, as in the ARPANET, the hosts became responsible. Kahn and Cerf published their ideas in 1974, which incorporated concepts proposed by Louis Bouzon and Hubert Zimmermann, designers of the Cyclades network. The specification of the resulting protocol of the Transmission Control Program was published as RFC 675, which I don't know what that is, by the Network Working Group in December in 1974. It contains the first attested use of the Internet as a shorthand for Internet work. With the role of the network reduced to a core of functionality, it became possible to exchange traffic with other networks independently from their detailed characteristics, thereby solving the fundamental problems of Internet working. DARPA agreed to fund development of prototype software. Testing began in 1975 through concurrent implementations at Stanford, BBN, and University College London. After several years of work, the first demonstrations of a gateway between the packet radio network PRNet in the SF Bay area and the Arpanet was conducted by the Stanford Research Institute. On November of 1977, a three-network demonstration was conducted, including the Arpanet, the SRI's packet radio van on the packet radio network, and the Atlantic Packet Satellite Network, SatNet. Between 1976 and 1977, Jürgen Dalal proposed separating TCP's routing and transmission control functions into two discrete layers, which led to splitting of the transmission control program into the transmission control protocol and the IP protocol in version 3 in 1978, originally referred to as IP/TCP. Version 4 was described in IETF publication RFC 791 if you want to look at it for yourself. 792 and 793. So in all of those, it was installed on SatNet in 1982 and the Arpanet in January of 1983, after the DoD made it standard for all military computer networking. This resulted in a networking model that became known informally as TCP/IP. It was also referred to as the Development of Defense DoD model, DARPA model, or Arpanet model. Serve credits his graduate students, Jürgen Dalal, Carl Sunshine, Judy Estrin, and Richard Karp, with important work on the design and testing. DARPA sponsored or encouraged the development of the TCP/IP implementations for many operating systems. Now we're getting to a little bit more modern information here. The IP version 4 uses 32-bit addresses, which limits the address space to two 32 addresses, i.e. for 294, 967, 296 addresses. The last available IPv4 address was assigned in January of 2011. The last person snatched it up. IPv4 is being replaced by its successor called IPv6, which uses 128-bit addresses, providing 2 to 128 addresses, i.e. is the length 340, 282, 366, 920, 938, 463, 463, 734, 607, 431, 768, 211, and 456. I can't tell you how big that number is by looking at it. This is a vastly increased address space, as you will have heard. The shift to IPv6 is expected to take many years, decades, or perhaps longer to complete, since there were 4 billion machines with IP version 4 when the shift began. So, my lovely and dear friends, I don't blame you if you're tuning out during this one, or if the views are a bit lower, but I hope you keep in mind, I know that this is a bit more technical and jargonous, so just feel free to go to sleep. Perhaps think of it like you're listening to another language and that you probably won't attain much from listening in closely, but just hearing my voice, being calmed and relaxed are all good things. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a nice time, a nice day, a good pause, a good relax, a good break, and I'll see you sometime very, very soon.